Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens. And today we're going to be talking about Battlerite, which is nice because we can't spoil that one. So there's no excuse to not listen to this entire episode. And I am joined, as always, by Billy the Battler Rothert.
Yeah, that works. I played a lot of Battlerite. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm excited to talk about this game. I've definitely put in a lot of hours, as it is one of my favorite new addictions. And we all know how I can be with an addicting video game.
That's true. And we are also joined, as always, by Pete Daily Quest Busby.
What's going on, everybody? Per our request for animal facts last time, I don't quite have a fact, but I have something you guys might find interesting if you looked into it. So back in the 1960s, this guy John Calhoun set up what he called a mouse utopia, and basically it unveiled a whole bunch of creepy things about resource management overpopulation. So if you want a cool sort of, well, I shouldn't say cool, he basically tortured some mice, but an interesting result of torturing mice, I guess, would be the best way to put it.
Wait, when you say mouse utopia, is it like the way that the Cenobites in Hellraiser want to show you the beauty?
Basically what it was is it started off as like a perfect environment where rats had as much food as they wanted, but it was a finite space. So as they reproduced, they had all these overpopulation issues. So what happened is some rats took over parts of this environment and set up these guarded tunnels, basically, where chosen rats would just sleep, eat, and groom themselves all day.
Wow.
So an interesting allegory for our times. A 1960s experiment on rats by John Calhoun. Take a look.
That is fascinating.
Yep.
That's horrifying.
I think I want to stop talking about Battlerite and just immediately research this, and we've got a new podcast. We can start a whole new podcast on just that.
We could just do one just based on time scientists have tortured rats.
Wow.
That could be the whole podcast.
We've got the name too, Ratopia. It's great.
This is the sequel to Ratatouille I didn't think I needed, but now I do. So this week, I'll remind you about feedback. We are storing all of our feedback like squirrels waiting for winter for next week's all feedback, all emails episode.
Woo.
So if you want to get in a question, it doesn't have to be about Battlerite. It can be about anything. But any questions, clarifications, if you want to heckle us about our opinions on Game of the Year, which some of you have already done that, and my opinions on Magic Pendulum will not be changed, and I will not be intimidated. But if you want to do so, you can do so at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. You can hit up our comment sections, or deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. We've got enough, but we can always use more.
Mm-hmm.
And without further ado, Billy, what's Battlerite?
All right, so Battlerite is an interesting game. This is what it describes itself as a team arena brawler released by Stunlock Studios. It is the spiritual successor to a game called Bloodline Champions, which was made by the same development company, Stunlock Studios. And at its core, when you think about Battlerite, you should think about a MOBA like League of Legends or Dota, but take away all of the laning and farming and item progression and level progression and, randomly spawn creep units, and like take away all the bad things about those games and
killing their base.
Yeah, and you just have like awesome team fights. That's the entire game. And rounds and matches are set up in best of 5. The standard matchmaking is best of 5. So first team to win 3 rounds is the victorious team. There are both 2 versus 2 and 3 versus 3 play modes right now, as well as a couple others that I'll touch on for just briefly. But the general idea is you have a champion with auto attacks, 4 special abilities, and an ultimate. And it works just like any other MOBA style game, League, Dota, whatever. Important
distinctions. It is controlled with WASD, your character, so you're not clicking around to move, and your character does not auto attack. You left click to do a basic sort of attack. Right click will be some sort of alternate move, and then your E and Q keys will both have some sort of low cooldown ability that you can use, and then usually there'll be an R move that's kind of a special or an extra special move, and then you'll ultimately charge up for an ultimate, kind of borrowing from Street Fighter or other fighting game mechanics.
Yeah.
So you basically earn super meter that you can spend on EX moves or on your ultimate if you store up enough.
And that's why this game doesn't fully fit into MOBA. And when I think about, Team Arena Brawler, something like, popular game released recently, For Honor would be a great example of like a Team Arena Brawler. Absolver is kind of like that too, another recently released game on Steam. Even stuff that are shooter-style games but are more focused in this direction, like maybe Team Fortress or something like that. That's a very like
Or Overwatch.
Yeah, Overwatch would count too. Overwatch is slightly more MOBA, but like the lines are blurred here. And Battlerite, I think it's a fantastic concept. It takes what I love about the MOBA genre and everything that I hated about the MOBA genre and just completely distilled and separated those two things, and I get to keep all the good stuff and none of the bad stuff.
Yeah, so I have a quick question, Pete. Can a game be a spiritual successor to the last game a studio made? Can you make a spiritual successor to your own game with no break in between the two games?
Like as opposed to just a sequel?
Yeah.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to make a ruling here. You cannot.
So Transistor is a direct sequel to Bastion?
No, I wouldn't say it's a spiritual successor, though. I think it's a completely different thing. But I feel like if...
You could potentially just call it a successor or a follow-up.
Yeah. I feel like if you're working on one game that's basically this, and then you abandon it midway, and then start another game that's kind of the same, you've just made a sequel. Or you've admitted that the first game wasn't as good as the second.
I mean, Bloodline Champions was a good and complete game. It just... Well, I guess we could call it a sequel because the champions in Bloodline Champions were, in many ways...
Champions?
A la Dota 1 to Dota 2, a lot of the core champions were taken from Dota 1 to Dota 2, but like retweaked for a new game balance. And similarly, they were taken over from Bloodline Champions to Battlerite. For example, the character Lucy in Battlerite was called the Alchemist in Bloodline Champions, and the character Taya in Battlerite was called the Nomad or the Wanderer or something like that in Bloodline Champions, and they had very similar abilities and playstyles. They just made new character models and new stories and stuff for them.
Yeah, so one of the things that jumps out immediately upon playing this game is all those things that are missing from Dota-style games. As someone who played a fair amount of Dota, I don't miss them.
No. The more we can cut from Dota, the happier we'll all be.
Because Dota, like the skill and knowledge floor required to play that game successfully is preposterously high. It has one of the highest barriers to entry of any game I've ever played. And just by getting rid of some of the nonsense you have to keep track of at all times, you've made a game that is infinitely more learnable, even if maybe there's not as much depth or maybe there's not as much esoteric skill. But overall, it seems like that trade-off... I mean, I was able to start playing this game within like 10 minutes of installing it and was able to win a match, which in Dota is... I mean, I might win the match, but
You're going to lose 30
have,
matches before you even know how to play in Dota.
I mean, you can win a match, but I would have very little to do with winning or losing. It's possible to be dragged to a win by your teammates.
Yeah, and the other nice thing about this, because it's, let's just say simpler, you can waste an hour in Dota just failing over and over again. Whereas here, I mean, what was the longest matches you guys played? I mean, there's an inherent time limit.
There is an inherent time limit. I'd say 10 minutes.
Yeah, they're short, they're quick, they're punchy.
The rounds, here's something that I do like, is that the rounds are... So there's a 2-minute clock in every round. And once the 2-minute clock reaches 0, the game doesn't end. This sort of ring similar
Goes
in
PUBG.
nature. Yeah, similar to like PlayerUnknown's Battleground, shrinks into the center of the arena, and if you are outside of the ring, you take significant damage over time. You don't instantly die. Sometimes it's worth it to go out of the ring for certain objectives, but eventually it will close all the way until there is no space left. There is only death, and whomever has the most life and can survive the longest is deemed the winner.
Yeah, and I think that just by simplifying the game, making it punchier, like the punchiness is such a refreshing thing. Like the first time I played it, I thought that this game would be a lot more League or a lot more Dota, and just being able to finish a game in 10 minutes, like knowing that it will take, I might be able to play 2 or 3 games in 20 minutes. It's just such a different experience.
It's because
Huge
you're allowed.
plus.
Yeah, huge plus. You are allowed to have variety. If you've got 1 or 2 hours to kill in an afternoon, you can play a game of Dota or 2, maybe if you're lucky, and you're probably going to be late to whatever you're going to afterwards.
And heaven help you if at any point you want to stop or take a break or leave.
Or you have to go to the bathroom, or like somebody calls you on the phone. Like there's nothing.
Yeah, Dota locks you down for 1/24th of your day at a minimum. Whereas I feel like Battlerite is a lot more user-friendly, and just on those small tweaks, delicious.
The fact that you can get a good team fight experience without all of the, honestly, stress and awful hassle of a true MOBA experience, that's the breath of fresh air for me, and I think it's the breath of fresh air for a lot of the player base.
I will say, too, so Dota's sort of, maybe I'm not qualified to make a claim like this, but I think Dota's sort of notorious in the atmosphere, let's say, of the game, right? It's not a very welcoming environment for new players. And this game seemed, at least on the surface, much more welcoming, which, I appreciate as somebody who doesn't play these games too often. But my concern is that I don't know what Dota was like at the very beginning, and maybe as sort of skill levels solidify, this game, Battlerite might drift in that direction as well, where the barrier to entry gets higher and higher.
Now, there's a higher skill ceiling than I'm seeing in my early games in Battlerite, but I think just by virtue of the fact that this game is played in a fast-paced action format, you don't have time to be typing stuff in Battlerite. You can't be flaming other players. You only have a few seconds in between rounds where you can even say things to another player if you want, and the game mutes chat by default. So if a person is typing garbage to you, you wouldn't even know most of the time, which I think makes it that's so much better than the way Dota handled it. And some of that is because Dota, it requires a lot of communication. If you're not going to be communicating, talking with your team, and pinging and doing all that sort of stuff, you're just going to lose. Whereas in Battlerite, if you know your character and what your character wants to do, and you have a decent idea of what your teammates, 1 or 2 characters, can do, you'll have a general idea about how to play well in concert, and you'll get in the ballpark. You won't be as good as if you're speaking to the person directly, but you can at least play your role correctly. And I think that's something we haven't really spoken about. There's 3 different types of characters that they kind of break up all the different heroes into. There's a ranged, melee, and support, and the supports kind of do their damage in either a ranged or melee kind of way, but mostly the supports have healing, the ability to heal, and that's what separates them from the rest of the characters. Melees tend to have more health, deal more damage, but they have issues getting in, and ranged characters can attack from afar. They tend to be faster.
Lots of characters have ways to heal themselves with some form of sustain. In fact, almost every character has some way to self-heal. The healers are the ones that can support your team, your entire squad. They either have some nice, big, like, heal over time AoE thing, or just a point and click, like, you get healed. That's a big difference. Also, supports tend to have a lot more disruption, lots more silence and stun, and petrify, and all these other cool effects. They'll have a lot more control as well.
Yeah, and mixing up your team, the matchmaking actually does a pretty good job of making sure that your team has a chance. It doesn't tend to throw two supports onto the same team and then go for it, or put two melee characters up against two ranged characters that they have no chance of ever catching. At least in my experience, I haven't gotten paired into a completely unwinnable situation. I've had some where you're really disadvantaged, but I never felt helpless.
I can speak more on this because I've just put in tons more hours. In my 2 versus 2 games, I do sometimes get like we're 2 melee, they're a support and a heal. They're a support and a ranged, but they're like technically 2 ranged heroes still. So, or sometimes it'll be like a Sirius and a Rakan, and Sirius is technically a melee support, but a melee nonetheless, against like a Jade and a Paloma, and they're 2 ranged heroes, but it's really a ranged and a support, so the game thinks that everything's cool, but you're really 2 melee versus 2 ranged. That'll happen sometimes, but in my 3 versus 3 matchups, I think more than 50% of the time, maybe even close to 2/3, I'll get a team that is 1 melee, 1 range, 1 support against 1 melee, 1 range, 1 support, and that's good. I love that. It makes a lot more balanced teams.
Yeah, and oftentimes, at least from the games I've played, even if you get one of those melee versus ranged or something like that, these heroes are not so one-dimensional that they can just be invalidated in that way. There's some heroes with glaring weaknesses, but they tend to not be so bad that skillful play can't make up for it.
A team comprised of primarily melee heroes can be terrifying, though, because while your melee heroes have ways of getting in, ranged heroes and support heroes have ways of getting out. The tricky thing is, if you have 2 melee heroes, your opponents are going to run out of ways of getting out eventually. So you're going to be on top of them at some point. So if you're a double ranged team, and you make one mistake against a melee team, you are in big trouble.
With this many abilities, you have, like, all told, you have, 8 total, let's say. Managing cooldowns becomes, the crucial part, especially like Billy's talking about, when you're dealing with these different mobility, either closing or escaping abilities.
Every character has 8 abilities. Every character has your
You're right, 5,
left and
2.
right click abilities.
Yep.
And you have your 4 keyboard button abilities, and then you have 2 EX abilities. Gino mentioned that briefly, but every character has 4 ways to spend meter. You have the R button, which typically costs 1 out of your 4 bars. Your ultimate, which costs all 4 of your 4 bars. And then all characters will have 2 other abilities that you can hit, like shift, and do a modified version of that ability that cost meter. In many cases, those good ways to get out, or that one extra way your character has to get out, will cost you meter. So very commonly, the very beginning of the game is a stressful time for a range support-based team because they don't have the meter for that one extra escape they would need to not get blown up.
Yeah, you can get mauled real quickly if you get caught flat-footed.
Gino played some Lucy, so he ought to know about that.
Yes, I played against a Lucy when I was Freya, and I think we should maybe talk a little bit about some of the heroes, because this game, it doesn't have that many, which is, thankfully, it doesn't have that many yet.
Like 24 right now, I think, something close to that.
They actually...
I'll double check.
And there's not a lot of overlap in how they play. Some of them are a little bit similar, but they've got enough unique abilities that they feel completely different, which is nice.
Per the wiki, it's 21 right now. I don't know if that's like how recently that's been updated, but
okay, yeah, but it seems like most of them are there aren't as many supports as there are ranged and melees. At least right now.
22. They added one more.
They haven't added Alicia yet.
Okay.
She just got released this week.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but what are your favorite heroes to play? What heroes were you liking?
So when I went ranged, I did Ashka, who's like a fire demon sort of guy. He has some cool abilities to sort of, lay down fire pits, basically. And I also use Jade, because she's a sniper, and I just have an inherent passion for snipers. Plus, her projectiles move really quickly, and I'm not very good at leading people with slow projectiles. And then in melee, I tried to do Shifu, but Shifu was hard, and I didn't quite put in the hours enough to get very good at him. so I used Raygon a little bit more because he's simple and easy to use. And then I'm a selfish person, so I didn't do too much support. But when I did, I used Sirius because he's a kick-ass ultimate attack.
He does.
Yeah,
Hot laser death.
Just real quick, it is actually 24. I counted all
24?
the actual heroes. Yeah, the
They
wiki,
need to update this wiki.
Yeah, they're missing Thorn, Alicia, and the new Gunner girl. I forgot her name.
Right,
She's Samus. She's
the
like
one who's Samus.
Yeah. Her name will come to me in a second.
Yeah. Billy, who are your go-tos?
Everyone.
Oh yeah, you were one of you backed this game, so you have access to everything.
Yeah, so this is something that I've seen a lot of free-to-play games do, where so I played the game when it was in early access, and at some point I want to go over some of the differences between the early access version and the current version upon release, but I did support the game in early access by purchasing a special player pack that gave me a couple of cool items, a couple of cool mounts, but it cost like $30 or something like that, and it gave me all the heroes forever, so I don't have to spend currency, in-game currency, or real money currency to unlock new champions. I just get the new champions. Now, I can still spend money to get cosmetics and stuff like that, but I don't have to worry about unlocking the heroes. Now, I actually don't know what that experience is like, so I honestly don't know what currency you use to buy the heroes.
Okay, so the way that you get access to heroes to start, it seems like Jade is just a default unlocked character who everyone can use to start, because she is the character
She's the tutorial character.
She's the tutorial, yeah. She's the simplest character to use. She's very effective. She's fun. I think a good choice on making her the default.
She does have a really high skill ceiling, though, so she is simple to start, and you can very easily learn her, but you can stick with her for a long time and increase your skill a bunch.
Yeah, she's not a joke. She's just easier to use than some of the other heroes. Then you get 6 characters unlocked temporarily. It seems like on rotation. Billy, can you check how quickly the rotation happens?
I'll look into that. I know that there is a rotation, I just don't know the duration.
Yeah, because for me, I got access to 6 heroes, and it looks like they manage it where you get access to 3 heroes that are beginner-friendly, and then 3 heroes that are kind of intermediate, older, like heroes that have been a little bit longer. So I got access to, in the melees, I got access to Bako and Freya. So Bako is a big shield dude with an axe. Freya is a Viking lady who does lightning things. I had Jade because she was the default character. I then had temporary access to Ashka, the fire person. You were playing Pete, and some sort of boomerang lass.
Taya.
Yeah, Taya's really cool.
I had Taya, and then support, I had Sirius and Lucy, the alchemist girl.
From what I did with a quick search, it looks like the rotation changes every Friday.
Okay. It changes every Friday, so I have not experienced a rotation yet. But the game, I think how they pick what characters you start with is smart. They give you at least 4 characters that you should be able to start. Maybe you won't play well, but you'll at least be able to not get mauled to death by picking these characters. And then the way that you handle unlocks, there are 3 currencies in the game. There's blue currency, which is paid currency. You can buy it with money. There are battle coins, which you can get by playing the game. You can do some quests, they'll give you coins. Some just leveling up your character rank or your account rank will get you those coins. And eventually you can use those to unlock characters. And depending on which character you want to unlock, it's a different amount. They seem to have balanced it where beginner-friendly characters are 950 coins each. Intermediate characters are about 2,000 coins, 2,000, I think 100 coins, or 150. Then more advanced characters will be even higher, and then the most recently released characters will be like 5,500 coins. So you can pretty quickly unlock all the beginner-friendly characters, but once you want to unlock, the character who just came out last week, you have to grind and grind and grind and grind, especially if they try to give you a bunch of battle coins early on through quests and some of your early leveling up, and it seems like they expect you to buy the beginner-friendly characters with that, and then after you get that initial burst of gold, then you're really just grinding levels by playing the game. and it'll lead you to slowly gain access to those additional characters. Or you can, unlock one high-level character, and that's the only high-level character you're going to have for a while.
Yeah,
And
so
then, the third currency is some sort of teal coin that you can use to buy cosmetics.
I'll add on to that. As a person who doesn't have to spend the gold to buy the characters, if you spend your gold on something else, for example, I have a bunch of the cosmetics. The currency that the game gives you more of by grinding is the gold currency, not the green cosmetic token currency. It gives you more of the gold currency by grinding through daily logins, through if you just log in every day, you get 50 gold coins. If you win a match, you get a certain number of gold coins based on I don't know if it's based on match duration or something, but it's not a fixed amount of gold coins per match. It varies a little bit. But,
it varies by wins and how well you do, stuff like that.
And so, here's what's interesting to me from a person who hasn't actually experienced this. The most gold coins I got by because I had all the characters unlocked from the beginning of the game. I said, I've never played Alder or Rakan or somebody. I'm going to go just grind them up from level 1 to level 10, which isn't that hard. It takes maybe 20 or 30 games with that character to get them to level 8 or 10. And you'd get 1,000 gold out of doing that.
Yeah, you get a ton
up.
Yeah, you get a bunch from the early levels.
So if that's true for you guys now, then the 5 or 6 early level early game characters you have, that gold that you grind just gets you the next one. So you actually don't net gain that much by unlocking the beginner characters. That I don't know if I like it that much, but this is so what I do like is that there's a way that you could get the expensive character that you want. That's really cool. But this is also a free-to-play game that's going to make its money by this model. And I don't criticize them for it because, in theory, you could unlock everything in the game without spending a dime.
And it's worth mentioning, they do sell an all-characters pack for I think it's $22 right now. That might just be because the winter Steam sale is on. But if you want to just buy all the characters, you can. You don't have to buy them all piecemeal. You could buy individual characters using the for money currency. You could also buy all the characters using just through Steam. It is more expensive if you unlock them individually than if you just bought the unlock all characters. And I believe that is similar to what you bought, Billy. So it'll unlock them in the future as well. So if you just want to play this game straight up as a multiplayer game, you can do it that way. So I like the different avenues this game has for unlocking all the content. If you want to just, test your feet, get your dip your toe in the water, you can do that. If you want to buy all the characters up front and play it like it's a fighting game or some sort of multiplayer only game, that's cool too. If you want to just unlock the character you care about, that works. I think it's pretty clever. And the actual way the economy breaks out, you get chests and characters. You can actually unlock characters from chests. I actually unlocked Baco just by opening a random chest.
I think it wasn't a random one. I think it was a special one that you got by playing with me. But that's cool too. If you didn't you get it by playing a game with me, with a friend or something like that?
I got an achievement for playing with a friend, but it just gave me I think a gold chest. And gold chests are ones that you get through a bunch of different means.
You could just legendary unlock a whole character?
Yeah, that's what happened.
Wow,
I just got lucky.
Nice. That's even better.
It made me wonder if that was something that was seeded because I was playing the game as a new player, or if that's something that can just happen randomly and I got super lucky, but hey, it worked out for me.
I can say I've opened a shit ton of those chests, and I think the heroes will probably be the orange colored, legendary version. That's pretty rare, but if you open up enough gold chests, it's doable. I think the problem is I think a gold chest costs 450 gold or something like that, or 350 or 450, and so it might not be an efficient way to look for heroes.
Oh, no, not at all. No, and it seems like they have daily quests that will just, play as 2 ranged characters, play as 2 melee characters, play as 4 different characters. Whatever those dailies are, once you bust those out, they tend to give you gold coins or chests. There are weeklies that will, I had a weekly that was log on 5 times in a week, and then you get a gold chest. They try to incentivize you for doing things that are useful to the game's economy. Like,
There's-
hey, watch a YouTube video on the game, post a YouTube video of you playing the game, like us on Twitter, and all these things will, kick off achievements, and those will give you in-game currency.
Yeah, I'm actually so down with that. If a game says, "Hey, like us on
Yeah.
Facebook and we'll give you
Sure.
like a special mount," great. Hey, follow us on Twitter, we'll give you like 1,000 battle coins, great. Join the Steam group. I think if you join the Steam group, you get like you get like 5 gold chests and like a special like I don't know, you get a bunch of cool stuff just by participating in their community. That's cool. Like you just get more hatred if you participate in the Dota community. But there's like a positive feedback loop here if you're just a cool person and you want to go like them on Facebook or like post a chat in the forum. Like,
Yeah,
that's cool.
especially for a free-to-play game, it's a really nice way to structure this economy such that, like, a game like Clash of Clans, right, that's just my go-to free-to-play example, like, it's not really free-to-play. The higher you move up, you're pretty much going to have to spend some money if you want to be, let's say, good, right, with all that implies at the game. Whereas, like, this, I'm by no means an upper echelon player, so I guess I don't really know. But it seems you can get pretty far just by engaging with some of these alternative economies as opposed to just dropping money.
And you
Yeah.
can. You're completely right.
You could totally just unlock the characters you need to do your business and then not spend a single dime. You can grind your way to unlocking every character. It's totally feasible.
And there's actually a way to play every character. This is something that was really cool. I'm going to talk for a little bit about pre-early access, post-early access. Do you guys have anything you want to jump on about economy again before I talk about something else?
I do want to say it seemed like a lot of the early game quests and achievements are really skewed towards giving you a burst of stuff when you first start playing, and it as it was happening, I'm like, so this is the first hit is free, isn't it? I see what's happening here. You're gonna give me like 75 chests. Oh, you logged into the game. Oh wow, you used a mouse. Good
Way
for
to go!
you. hit the Q button. Here's 7 chests.
I mean, it's a structure that's worked for centuries,
Yep. So, if
Yeah,
you want to be the very best, like no one ever was, you're probably gonna have to play this game a whole lot more than is implied by the early game's economy.
But that said, if you have a hero rotation and you unlock 2 or 3 heroes that are beginner friendly, you can still get really deep into the game.
Yes, yeah,
Absolutely.
It seems like the depth is there with all of the different characters that I didn't see any that seemed completely outgunned if you were skillful.
Right. There's a game mode that allows you to. So there's a game mode called Duel, and this is something that's a new addition from early access to now. It's one that I'm personally really excited about. It's not the standard matchmaking, and I guess I'll talk about the different matchmaking modes right now, because this is a good time to bring this up. So this game has casual matchmaking, which is the standard unranked, and league matchmaking, which breaks people into, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, grandmaster, all that good stuff, leagues. The game also has a tutorial, a playground mode where you can just go test out some of your different Battlerites and champions. You have to have those unlocked, though.
No, you don't. You
For Playground?
Test out in Playground. You can test out every champion, every battle right.
Whoa, that's amazing.
Very nice.
Let me test. I've tried almost every character.
That's so cool.
That's a smart move.
I thought you had to have Playground had the champion. No, that's 1,000 times better. This way you can know who you want to spend money on.
Yeah.
Well, there's another way you can actually play the heroes, and it's in the duel mode. Duel is one that I'm personally really excited about. It is, instead of a best of 5 rounds, it's a best of 3 rounds. It's 1 versus 1, and you get a new champion every round.
Randomized?
Yeah, it's a random champion every round.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That's daunting to a person who's like, I don't really know how to play this game really well, so I'm really new. But I played every hero up to like level 10. Out of 20 is the max. So I've just messed around with every single hero. And that game mode is really appealing to me because I love like the end of a round where like your teammates are dead, it's just you versus the other person, you've got only 20% health left, and like it's really tense. it's just a whole game mode of that. And that was really sexy to me because it allowed me to, again, further separate the game's mechanic and my personal skill. And I could just say, oh, you know what? I got a random 3 heroes and I like 2-0'd that guy because, I guess I knew more about the game. It's a way that if you want to have that kind of experience where you are not so much measuring up character meta versus character meta, it's how deep is your knowledge pool versus how deep is my knowledge pool. If you want that experience, you get it there. And that's why I like that as an option.
First thing, your definition of what the word sexy means, and I think everyone else's, is very different, and I just want to call that out. 2, do you get to pick battle rights when you get assigned your random character, or do you just go in with no battle rights?
You do get to pick battle rights. You have to repick them for every new round.
My
one drawback is that when you start a real match, you have 60 seconds to pick your battle rights.
Oh, I don't know if we said what battle rights are.
We'll talk about that in a second. We didn't talk about the entire game's central mechanic. You get only 30 seconds to pick your battle rights in the duel mode. And I don't know how I like that, because you get a new champion every round. You want some more time to consider your battle rights.
So battle rights are kind of passive. They're passive buffs on your character that change the way your character plays. So, for example, the character whose battle rights I was the most happy with was Freya, my lightning Viking woman. She has a battle right that her right click, she throws one of her hammers, and one of her battle rights allows her to throw 2 hammers before she has to go on cooldown. So that means that she can just do 2 ranged attacks. Otherwise, she's a completely melee character. But by having access to 2 ranged attacks, she can actually play a distance game in a way that she can't when she only has 1 hammer. I had one battle right that when she has kind of a stomp move. I had one that I think when she stomped, she applied an extra. She vacuumed people in so that they got drawn closer to her. I had a counter one that when she put up her counter attack, if someone attacked her, they got vacuumed in. And then a few other ones that let her move around and deal more damage. But when I was playing with just the default battle rights, I didn't have that 2 hammer situation. And Billy was like, you need to play with 2 hammers. You need to be tossing hammers. And that one change made her play like a completely different character. That second hammer throw, she actually, when she put static charge onto a opposing character, the next time, and if you then hit them with her hammer, it will send them flying if they're already static, and then if they hit into a wall, they're incapacitated for a full second.
It's 3 seconds, or 2. It's 2 or 3 seconds. It's a good long time.
It's enough.
Yeah.
It's enough.
It's enough.
Yeah,
One of my favorite battle right situations is on Esmo, a character that I played a ton of. I think he's my most played hero. One of Esmo's battle rights, I'll explain 2 of them. Esmo's right-click ability is one that is similar to Jade's, a very long-range snipe, but it can be charged up. The longer it charges, the more damage it deals, but also the further its range stretches. One way you can modify his right-click ability is just by adding more damage based on how far you stretch. That doesn't seem very good up close, but what makes the difference is something else we're going to talk about, which is the orb in the center of the map. Killing that thing gets your allies and your whole team resources, and it can make the difference between killing that thing and not before the enemy team does. Another battle right that he has for that same ability is that move where it normally would just do damage. It would do the damage but also silence the other opponent, which is particularly useful for interrupting certain abilities that may be long-time channel abilities, like Sirius's ultimate that Pete likes to use. Another battle right for that same ability is the range increases by 25%. That's huge. That actually allows me to outrange Jade's snipe if it's pretty close. It's like 5 or 10 units extra out of the 100 that the range is or whatever, but it's enough that I can know Jade's range and be just outside of it, and I say, oh, she's charging, I'm going to charge too, but I'm going to hit and she'll miss. It makes all the difference.
Yeah, and this game it's got enough depth and subtlety that a little battle right like that or a few little changes can just make the character feel completely different, which is nice. You can go in on one ability that you really like to use and use 2 of you get up to 5 battle rights to apply on any given match, and I think there are it really depends on the hero. Some of them feel like they have 20 or 15 battle right options.
It's true. There's not consistent in early access. Every hero had exactly 14 battle rights, and now heroes can have anywhere from 14 to 20.
Yeah, and depending on which 5 you pick, you can end up with a character. You could put all of your battle rights. You can put 2. You said you can put at most 2 onto the same ability, right?
Right. So on one particular ability, you may have at most 2 battle rights that modify it.
So if your character had one very useful ability on a low cooldown, you can't just stack it with all of the battle rights that buff that ability, which is fair. But usually stacking 2 onto that ability will be enough to make it play very differently and much more effective.
You could in early access.
Makes sense.
That was actually pretty big for some characters. One that comes to mind is a character named Varish, and Varish has this ability that applies a shield to either himself or an ally, and you could just dump all the battle rights into that shield, and then every 12 seconds someone became a god on your on your team. They had temporary 30 extra health, where most characters have a total health pool between 190 and 250, so 30 more health is a 15-20% health increase sometimes, depending on if you lost some health, and then you move faster and deal more damage, and it snares your opponent. Someone became just a god every 12 seconds.
That's pretty intense. Yeah, so I think that they've balanced it a little bit better.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning the orb. There are a few collectibles on the map. Each map is not quite as elaborate as something like an Overwatch or Dota has one map, but a lot of other games that have adopted multiple maps. Battlerite has a few different maps, but other than having a few walls in different places and some health and meter pickups in slightly different places, they play pretty similarly. There's usually a big open space in the middle, a few walls and things to hide behind in the outskirts, and then at 2 minutes, it really comes down to the big open space in the middle.
Right. Tactically, you pretty much want to maintain the center if you can.
Definitely.
It's like chess in its way.
It actually is. Mm-hmm.
There's a big disco ball. There's a big piñata that spawns every few seconds in the center of the map, and it is important for you to euthanize that piñata instead of your opponent. If we've learned anything from Viva Piñata.
Beautiful word choice, Gino. Beautiful word choice. So I want to hit on some of the things that changed from early access to the present version of the game, and this is something that sort of spawned my discussion and wanted to pick this game. So a couple of things that are cool is in early access versus now, we didn't have that cool duel mode. There was a time where we didn't have the playground and you couldn't mess around. So a lot of cool things got added in development. One of the major differences between early access and now is the Battlerite system. In early access, when you started a match, you didn't just get to pick all 5 battle rights. You had to pick 1 every round. And you had a limited number of battle rights to choose from. So, for example, if you were playing a particular hero and the match begins and it's round 1, you've got 30, 45 seconds to pick your first battle right out of 3 that the game chooses for you. It's preset. Every hero had battle rights associated with every round of combat. So, first round, you pick 1 battle right. Next round, you pick your second. Third, fourth, fifth, etc.
So you started with 5 that were auto-selected?
What?
Did you start with 5 that were auto-selected, or your character started with no battle rights?
You had no battle rights.
Okay.
You had no battle rights. You just had 1 for your first round. 1 player modification for your first round. And as the game progressed, you got more battle rights. So that by the end, you had all 5. The very last round, you had all 5. But it had to go to round 5 to get 5 battle rights. If you got 3-0'd, you only got 3 battle rights that round.
That's
so
pretty
here's
messed
something
up.
else. Well, it seems messed up, but I actually liked it a little bit. Now, I like both systems because they have pros and cons, and I want to touch on them right now. So, this current version of the game at present, you have a complete pool of battle rights, and you have all of them to choose from, and you get all 5 at the start of the round, start of the whole match. This means you can have a loadout, like a predetermined set, like you can like save a custom loadout, and you can have 2 or 3 of them saved, and you can have your one loadout for this kind of matchup and your one loadout for the other kind of matchup, and you might be playing one character, but they could be 2 different characters with different battle rights. That's really cool. I like that. You have a lot of freedom, a lot of customization. However, in the earlier version, where you had one battle right per round and a limited number to choose from, the developers had to make really smart choices about what battle rights they put in each round. Because the battle rights that they put in one round, you could never have that other battle right in that tier. So they prohibited some battle rights from going together. Now, that was good because it forced players to not just slam all their battle rights into one ability like we did for some heroes, although it still happened on occasion. But what it added was this layer of like counterpicking in depth from one character to the next. So when I played against, for example, a Jade and I was Esmo, one of Jade's abilities was stealth resets the cooldown of snipe. So she can just snipe and then stealth and then snipe again. So if she picked up that battle right, and I knew what round she would get it was like round 1 or 2 that she could get that battle right, I would change my battle right in round 2 or 3 based on what she got. So I could sort of pick and counterpick as the match developed, and this made the match literally develop as it went on, as opposed to, lost round 1, I'll try better round 2.
That's
now,
a good point.
There was like a new skill ceiling. It was higher of, alright, I know what battle rights my enemy player has to choose from this round. What are their 3 options? What are my 3 options? What is the best chance of me modifying my character based on that matchup? And it forced me to make more choices. Now that's harder for a new player.
Yeah, it just seems like it's interesting, but it seems like a lot of memorization.
It did seem like a lot of memorization. That's true. I had to, but see, I had already played the other characters, so I knew what their arsenal was like because I had played all the heroes. So I knew what their arsenals had, and there were also fewer characters. There was only like 12 or 14 characters when I first played.
As it expands, it would seem that process would become prohibitive.
And it takes on the Dota problem, where all of a sudden you've got these entrenched players who know all of this stuff, and they're just adding an individual character, whereas a new player has to, they have to climb a mountain at a certain point. You got to take it in as, one new character, digest it, 1 12-character burst, and then 1 character at a time from then on. But every time they add a new character, a new player, it'll be that much harder. But I think that the counterpicking, it's really a trade-off between entrenched entrenched players who will know all of these matchups. They'll know which of these counterpicks and picks. The people who really know the meta will get a pretty significant advantage based on that original setup. Mm-hmm. And there are some characters that without a battle right, or with only one battle right, depending on which ones they gave you access to, will be horrendously handicapped against another character, who can just function better without them. Like Lucy is one of the characters that springs to mind. She's a character she's a healer, but she has only 1 escape move. She's got a couple of active abilities that will kind of get enemies off of her a little bit, but if they dodge those attacks, she's got 1 dodge roll with invincibility frames, and then everything else she just has to position herself well. And against some opponents who just have the ability to teleport up on her or dodge her attacks or reflect certain things, they can just get in on Lucy whenever they want. And you can mitigate that a little bit with some of the battle rights by combining them in an appropriate way to where she has escapes where she wouldn't otherwise. But if she just, gets 1 pick at the beginning of the round, you might lose 2 rounds before she is a functional character again.
That's exactly right. I mean, the thing that springs to mind is the Lucy versus Bako matchup. Absolutely terrifying for Lucy in the early access version of the game. Bako, from the start of the game, no battle rights, has a reflect ability, has a jump in ability, and a dash ability. Mm-hmm. So Lucy's best get off me move is Panic Flask, which makes the enemy become feared, and then they run away from you against their will. That's her best get off me move. She got Clarity, which is like a little like burst of wind that like pushes people away in an AoE, but if you aim it wrong, it can actually push them towards you. And she's got
a dodge roll and a shield, and the
she
shield
has a shield that just
helps a
soaks
little.
damage, but you still get smacked, and a dodge roll that costs meter. Well,
and it doesn't even roll that far compared to some of the other characters.
It doesn't even roll
mobility.
that far. So, first game, like round 1, Bako versus Lucy. Bako's like, wow, free round or free dead character on the other person's team.
Mm.
Now that you can pick all Battlerites, you can say, okay, shit, there's a Bako on the other team. That person's really good at getting in on Lucy. So I'm gonna get the Battlerite that makes my shield knock away. I'm gonna get the Battlerite that lets me my clarity inflict a snare too, so that even if I don't push them away, they're gonna be slowed no matter what. You know, like I can make myself not instantly die round 1. Another good thing is, for example, Lucy's a great example of a character who really doesn't want to use her ultimate. Her ultimate's big and splashy and cool, but if you're saving up all your meter, people are gonna know it's coming, and they're gonna wait for it. You basically throw a big pool of acid on the ground. It does damage over time, but if you jump out of it, you are fine. You've burned your whole meter on Lucy, and you didn't do much with it. In the old Battlerite system, everybody had the exact same round 5 selection. It was, instead of getting 3 Battlerites to choose from, you got 2, and those 2 Battlerites modified your ultimate. Some champions' abilities are much better than their ultimate, so you don't want to use them. So like Esmo, for example, a character that I played a shit ton of, you don't want to use his ultimate ability. His meter moves are much better. So every time it was round 5, I was like, great, I don't get a new Battlerite. I get one that I don't care about.
And the other character might get something game breaking, and you get a thing that's useless.
Yeah. Because some people's ultimates are good. Taya, for example, has a great ultimate, and one of her ultimate abilities just made it like exponentially better. Like the more she was using it, the more it got better, and that's a great ultimate to pick up in a game. But for a hero like Lucy or Esmo, their meter is worth much more. Also, what's his name? Snap! I'm forgetting the guy who's like the wolf archer. I forget his name.
Samurai Jack. I don't know.
Jumong. Yeah, Jumong's ultimate, huge, splashy, useless.
I don't know. He looks a lot more like the villain from Mulan.
Yeah, that's honestly what he is.
So Pete, as someone who hasn't played this game a ton, what did you feel about the game's balance? Did you notice that you were like there were certain heroes you had a lot of trouble dealing with, or anything that?
Well, this is actually something I wanted to bring up, right? So, at least in terms of, so I watched a lot of like YouTube videos, just to get a deeper feel for this game. Like I said, it's a genre I'm less familiar with, and there were a lot of comments on sort of the lack of tiers in this game. Like there isn't really a breakdown of like, okay, this character's good, this one's OP, this one's UP. Right? It was more just based on matchups. And, this came after, I just want to shout out, I read this great article on Kotaku. Tier lists are full of shit by Maddie Myers.
Oh yeah, Maddie Myers is awesome.
Yeah, it was a great article. It was lamenting like the idea that when you play a fighting game, you're sort of beholden to these tiers, and if you pick a bad tier character, you're going to take a lot of flack for it. But really, these tiers are subjective. There's a whole bunch of problems. It's a good read. So, I wonder if you guys, I'll get to maybe questions of what I had some trouble with after this. But first, let me ask you guys if you found that sort of YouTube commentariat correct, that there's really not the sort of tiers here that you'd see in maybe the example in tier lists are full of shit was based a lot on Smash Bros. I should say Street Fighter 4 was the main focus, but where these tiers become sort of entrenched and ultimately self-fulfilling.
Yeah, so I would say with this game, I did not find it to be that impactful. There were just certain strategies, because I was mostly playing casual and I was mostly playing 2-on-2. So a lot of the time I was just kind of thrown into these matches where the AI or whatever the picker happening in the background to set you up, the matchmaker, whatever it picked for you, I might get put onto a team where I'm just disadvantaged, or I'm put with a teammate who doesn't know what they're doing. or doesn't know how to synergize well with my character. Like there were times where I was a Bako and I had a healer on my team who was a support. Oh, they should be healing me. They should be standing behind me because I have a shield that helps them. They should be taking pot shots from afar. But instead, they're running in and then they're separating so that we're both on opposite sides of the map. Well, shit. It's not that the characters are fucked. It's because something happened with the teammate. But I will say that it seemed like there were some characters who just had more options than others. Mm-hmm. Like some of the newer characters have some abilities and the way that they blend that made them seem just like more effective versions of other characters. Like Thorn was a character who seemed really powerful. Like he's got the ability to like raise an arm behind his opponent and then draw them in. He can vanish underground for a bit and then burst out of the ground underneath his opponents. His ultimate covers a bunch of space and then covers it in thorns so your opponent can't walk in that area. It blocks projectiles too. He's got a Battlerite that makes one of his arms stretchy so that it pulls people in, and it seemed like his playstyle was similar to some of the other melee heroes, but he just had more range. Like he just had a greater ability to get in on characters than some of the other characters. Now, it's not one-to-one, because a lot of the times the ultimates and some of the big splashy abilities are different enough that there are good reasons to pick a different character. But it seemed like in a system where you're mostly getting matched up by matchmaking and you're picking your Battlerites at the beginning of this, best 3 out of 5, you can get put in a position where you're really disadvantaged, and there are certain characters that are better against the field versus some characters that are, you really want to know what you're up against, or you want to adjust after that first round because you know that, oh, my setup was wrong. But there are some characters that just like, here's a setup, here's a balanced pick, and I'm going to be, 50% against the field. But there are some characters who are like, 30% against most matchups and then 70 or 80 against a good matchup with a good pairing. And it's just really random. But I feel like if you were in a team competition, yeah, you could rock just about anyone as long as you're all confident in what your character and your team's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I can speak a lot about tier lists, as I was a slave to them myself when I played some of these other fighting games. I played quite a lot of Street Fighter. I've played probably 20,000 hours of Super Smash Bros. In my life. Not an exaggeration. And
I'm going to do some math real quick, but you keep talking.
Yeah. So you know that theory of like 10,000 hours makes you a master of something? I'm a double master.
Yeah,
of Super Smash Brothers.
You are 2 Malcolm Gladwell's worth of Super Smash Brothers.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So I'll say this.
That's 833 whole days.
That's
of Smash.
Yeah, easily.
Okay. All right. Sure.
I'm going all the way back to Melee, like a la 2001. So
we care about you, Billy, and we love you.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I played 2,000 hours of Dota. Easy mode.
We care about you, Billy, and we love you.
I played 10 times as much Smash as Dota. That's healthy.
Okay.
I've drank twice as much tequila as I have bourbon.
Yeah.
All right, so when I look at the tier lists for Street Fighter and Super Smash Bros., one of the most popular websites that people go to for tier lists is a website called Event Hubs. And the way they do it for the Super Smash Bros. Tier list, the last time I checked, this could have been updated, but when I was a slave to the tier list, here's how it worked. They would ask the community to rate every particular matchup. Go into a character and say, against each other character out of 10 matches, who wins how much? So they'd say, this character would win 7 out of 10 matches against that other character. Oh, but against this person, 4 out of 10. And then you take all those matchup numbers and like average them, and they get like a score of, on average, they're going to win like 6.85 matches against the field, against the entire other, like all the other characters in the whole game. All right, well, then a player who won 7.2 matches out of 10 was higher tier. And that, I think, was a truer reading of a tier list, because it said, let's measure up every single matchup, and how does this character fare in the entire pool. It's more validated the more characters there are, and it's more validated the more people participate. On the other hand, tier lists that are made by a single user, maybe a professional or an expert, that it's like an expert in the meta as opposed to what people think the matchup is on like a case-by-case basis. Someone who would know the meta, and this is much more important in like a Street Fighter scenario, would say, oh, like this character is really good right now, and this one character has a particularly strong matchup. Therefore, that one character also becomes top tier. Because if you're good against the other best character, that makes you one of the best characters. Great example is Balrog versus Guile in Street Fighter. Balrog is a very punchy, want to get in your face character, and Guile is a very, I want to play defense and I want you to get in my face. So, where Guile otherwise has weaknesses in Street Fighter, Balrog was really good, and Guile's real good against Balrog, so Guile rose higher in the tier list. Those are two ways that I think the tier lists work. Now for Battlerite, I think that there is a tier list closer to how the Super Smash Bros. Tier lists work, like how does one character fare up against the entire field. But what I think is different is that the gap between top tier and bottom tier is much smaller here.
Mm-hmm.
The tier lists that I saw for Battlerite, and they do exist, have like S tier, A tier, and B tier, and like that's it. And like C and D and E and double S, like they don't exist. There's who's really balanced, who's slightly too good, and who's like slightly not quite as good, and the space between them are very narrow, like it's very small. I play heroes in Battlerite that are the top tier, and I play heroes in Battlerite that are bottom tier and have similar win rates, because it's how you use them, much more in Battlerite than in some other games. In Super Smash Brothers, if you played a character, like let's take Brawl for example. I played Super Smash Brothers Brawl more than any of the other Super Smash Brothers games, and I played Ganondorf, who was 100% the worst character in the entire game, and had good win rates, but they were just objectively bad. Their toolkit was awful. And there were some characters like Meta Knight and Snake and Diddy and Falco who just had completely decked out toolkits. That was an example of a balanced Grand Canyon between those two characters. There is no Grand Canyon between any two characters in Battlerite right now.
Yeah, and I bring it up because it's, I think, a huge advantage, right? If you just have large swaths of your characters who become, based on varying metas, ultimately unplayable, I mean, just it decreases the value of the game so much.
Yeah, and I think what Battlerite, I think what people usually mix up when they read off of tier lists is that those tend to be tiers predicated on who the best players playing against another great player would want to have in that matchup, or how they feel the matchup is. That is very different from Joe Schmo who doesn't know what they're doing. Like, you can beat an average person using a character that you know that they are not as familiar with pretty easily, even if they are, using a high-tier character. It is very rare that there's a character who is so unbalanced that even in low-level play, they are unbalanced. Like, one example, I think, is Sagat in original Street Fighter IV. He was really unbalanced. Like, he just dealt more damage than everyone else, and he had a lot of health. Like, it was a combination of extra damage, extra health, and a lot of his things that he did to play well were very safe. So it was just really rough sledding playing anything other than Sagat in,
Vanilla
mid-tier.
Street Fighter 4?
Yeah, Vanilla Street Fighter 4 in like mid-tier play. But in games like Battlerite or Super Street Fighter 4, some of the other rebalances, it stopped being that way. And it seems like as long as you keep it where, just about any character can beat just about any other most of the time with average players, I think you're fine. And I think the Battlerites also blur things just enough that you can feel like you've got some ownership in your win rate, even if you're playing a low-tier character.
You do have some ownership. And like, there are some characters that versus a specific hero, they're afraid of that other hero because their toolkit is really well suited against your own. But now that Battlerites are introduced, you could say, okay, well, these Battlerites that I normally would not pick because they're not good otherwise, I need these right now because I'm against this particular character.
Yeah.
Many players will just use the default battle rights or use one that they've picked, and then they'll just brain dead click it every single match. But in theory, you should have different battle rights every single match based on who you're playing.
Yeah, and I think that that's a big difference. And unlike Dota, where a lot of the characters, what they want to do, and because there's the Street Fighter analogy, but those characters are the same every single round, and they've got their strengths and weaknesses. Dota is one where there's ostensibly supposed to be a lot more customization, and generally there are, but in the roles of certain characters, at the end of the day, if you get to the end game and your opponent has an anti-mage, at a certain point, if they are not terrible, they're going to murder everyone because their character just scales a million times better than everyone else. And that just kind of makes him a high-tier character at certain points of the game. It's hard to screw up. Whereas
there's never a meta where anti-mage is not viable. He always has a place in the game because he isn't a character, he's an archetype.
Yeah, he is the end game. He's the period at the end of a sentence. Once you get to the end of the sentence, he's going to win the game because he's just so hard to keep down. But there's not that sort of inevitability with Battlerite because the matches are over so much faster. Which I think when I was
there's rounds, like at a new round it resets. So if you just get blown up round 1 or 2, round 3 it's equal playing field again.
Yeah,
which you're down a round, but if you just get blown up in the beginning of a Dota match and you feed yourself to an enemy hero 3-4 times, your next hour is wasted. But if you just eat shit for round 1 of Battlerite, round 2, the game is completely even keel again.
Yeah, I've done complete down 2-0 comebacks. That happens.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that I noticed with Battlerite when comparing it with Dota and other MOBAs is because it has so many fewer just weird mechanics. There's no trees that make you invisible or secret shops you need to find or, certain areas of the map you get bonuses for no good reason. Oh, there's a day-night cycle. Some characters are good at night. There aren't as many knobs to tweak. And it leads to some of the characters feeling a little bit more samey. There aren't as many weird gimmick characters as there are in something like Dota.
It was worse before.
What, that they all felt samey?
A lot of the characters did feel very, very samey. One example is Bako and Rook felt a lot more cloney of one another. Oh, hey, look, we're both two huge bodies that want to run right at you. And when Raigon was released, Raigon felt so much like Shifu. Now let me ask, why did you pick Raigon over Shifu, Pete?
It was mostly a barrier to entry question. Raigon was easy to just pick up. I sort of knew what he was about in terms of reflecting, charging up his slashes, all that kind of stuff.
Right. There were heroes like Raigon when he was initially released felt to me a lot like Shifu. His just general play style was almost a mirror, and even the buttons that activated their abilities were the same. Their counter abilities were very much the same. Their get in on you abilities were very much the same. The way they even had their left click and right clicks work were very much the same. So they were basically copycats with some tweaks here and there. Shifu deals more damage, has more mobility. Raigon self-sustains and has a little more durability. There were pros and cons, but in later iterations and later balances, they made the characters much more unique. So, Gino, you have a point that there's some sameness because there's less knobs to turn, like in Dota. But that is something that's being actively improved. So I'm seeing the positive change, and you're right that they feel samey right now. I feel like that's going to just only get better and better.
Yeah, and I guess it's something that I'm missing. I actually like in games. This is something that I think it's a high level nuance thing that I like when something seemingly unintuitive is actually good. I like finding the weird nonsense. I like that there's a character in Dota called Night Stalker who half of the game is worse, and then half of the game he's a monster because it's nighttime. That's a weird thing. And he's got an ultimate. His ultimate is he forces it to be nighttime because his buffs are so good at night. Like, that's such a weird, esoteric thing. There's a character now, I think he's Monkey King, and he can stand on top of trees. There's Trent Protector, who wants to be near trees. And so it makes you have to care about this element of the game that you didn't care about before, and by adapting that knowledge a little bit better, it makes you more effective, and it can even be high tier.
What is specifically cool about like adding Monkey King and Tree and Protector and stuff to Dota is that the other hero abilities in the game that interacted with trees just became way more interesting.
Exactly.
Like, so they otherwise did nothing.
Like Timbersaw,
Timbersaw, for example.
I'm going to clear cut this area so that they can't escape here. Like, that's a thing that you just can't. You don't get to care about in Battlerite. There aren't gimmick characters in the same way. And even if there were gimmick characters, I think they would have to be something along the lines of an El Fuerte in Street Fighter, where they've got a gimmick. Like, his thing is he runs at you, and then he's got a mix-up that he can do depending on what button he presses when he's running. And he just kind of does that over and over and over again. And he's got some other weird mix-up stuff that he's all offense, got almost no escape. But it's fun, it's interesting. Hakan, he can cover himself in oil, and then he's got different properties depending on if he's oily or not. But that's not a complete, like, what the hell is this mechanic even? Why is it good? What's happening? So I feel like maybe, I don't even know what you would add. Like, there are some characters that care a little bit more about knocking people into walls, and that's a little interesting. Like, maybe you could have someone who interacts with some of the environment or raises and lowers walls. It seems like the Samus character kind of creates barriers a little bit, but as they play around with this space, I'm going to be very interested to see how they adapt, because I think right now they've got a good baseline, but I'm waiting for when they do the crazy stuff. And I'm sure that once they start doing the crazy stuff, it will hurt them in the long run, because that is what adds the nonsense that makes it harder for new players.
Just bulk. Like, it's not... It's I'll come up with it better now, but yeah.
Yeah, it's that high-tier nuance that, the experts enjoy, and then the newer players suffer through. Like, I want the equivalent of a creatureless deck in Magic. I like when that happens, when you've got a deck, or like a landless deck. I play no lands.
Something that should be bad can sometimes be good. You want that to happen at some point?
I always enjoy when you get to the craziest situation. What's your deck about? Oh, my deck's about dumping my hand into the graveyard, and then that's all I do. My deck has no lands in it.
But how do you kill me? Oh, you'll see.
Oh, it's going to be real bad for you. You're not going to even be able to stop it. Yeah, I like this game.
There's a couple of things that strike me as gimmicky, but they fixed them. For example, have you guys interacted with heroes that go invisible?
Yeah.
What happens when they get close to you?
You get an eye when they're close. You get a red eye when they're very close.
Boy, that was a great addition, because that did not exist before. So you had people go into 2v2 matchmaking, and you're playing against a Jade and a Croak, and you just can't see the other team, because half the time they're invisible, but they're still attacking you. So, one of the things that was a big change was the heroes like Jade and Esmo, where their right-click ability, their just basic auto-attack abilities, their standard left-click abilities, they fire rapidly. They used to fire more rapidly. Like, Jade used to have, something like 8 or 12 bullets in her gun, and she'd just go, like, it would be really fast. And they would deal less damage, but she'd reload over and over again. And Esmo shot like 5 or 6 little bolts really, really quickly. And now he shoots 3, and now Jade only shoots 4 bullets. And what was good about those characters that had, the rapid bullets is you could, spray them in a line, and when you hit something, you knew where your invisible enemies were. You could, almost shotgun them. Character named Eva, or Iva, I think is her actual name.
Iva, I think.
Yeah, Iva does the same thing with her shotgun. Her regular attack is a shotgun, so she can seek out an invisible hero. But then they changed those heroes' attack abilities, and then they added the little eyeball that says when an invisible hero is next to you. So it used to be really weird and difficult to play against a double invis hero base. And some heroes could artificially create that if it didn't already exist in their arsenal. And so the double invis lineup was really, really hard but then they fixed it.
Yeah, I think that the eye is a lot more meaningful with Croak because he's a melee hero and wants to.
Yeah.
And when he's invisible, the first thing, if he hits you out of invisible, it
You're
like
stunned.
stuns you. It's really bad. You need to know when he's near you. Jade, I think, gets to avoid that a little bit because she actually wants to be invisible and far away sniping. So it fixes some of it, but it seems like some of these characters getting into. I like that they kind of interact with very different status effects, but you know, it's another one of those things where the more status effects and unique modifiers you add to the game, the longer term,
Wow.
the
Jade
more it's
used to
going to
have-
hurt new players. It's a
Jade used to
real
have 3
trade-off.
invisibility moves. I remember when she had like 3 ways to become invisible.
That's rough.
She had her actual stealth move. There was a Battlerite you could get that made her jump, make her go stealth, and then she had her EX ability, which was probably the best in the game. Her EX ability for like her stealth was she didn't become stealth, she became immaterial. And also any allies around her became immaterial, and they also got healed afterwards. I think it was like some hot bullshit, but like your whole squad just became untouchable, and you could reposition yourselves however you wanted for like 2 seconds. It was unreal.
Yeah.
But that stuff where you go all in. Oh, okay, yeah. Here's I think what we're actually getting at. You can't go as all in anymore as you used to be able to, and I think that does limit some players' creativity because you can't just throw some hot bullshit and see if it sticks. But I think it forces people to make choices that are ultimately better for the gameplay experience for everyone.
So are you guys familiar with what the high-level competitive scene for this game looks like?
No, I
I
have no
am.
idea.
So Billy, what is the format? Because a lot of the, when you're playing casual, it's pretty much here's your heroes, you picked your battle rights, you're kind of stuck with them, hope you didn't get screwed too bad. How do they handle it with high-level play?
So instead of a best of 5, they do a best of 9. It's usually a first to win 5 rounds. I haven't watched a lot of high-level play with the new Battlerite system where you pick them all at the start of the match. They may change something in response to that, but earlier in the old version of the game where the Battlerites were picked round by round, you would get to round 5, there would always be a round 5 because you lost if you lost round 5. So that was cool. That's one like mechanical difference. When you were playing in like high level competitive scene, there was almost every single time there was a healer and somebody else. Not necessarily a not necessarily a support, but someone who had the ability to heal and like be a damage soak. Either had high self sustain or was an actual support with a healer. And the matches lasted really, really long. Like the circle would come in almost every single match and make the situation tight. And it's because the high level competitive play knew so much about their footsies and what moves outranged other moves, and people didn't go in unless there was a sure thing. So actually, crappy pub Croak play is kind of chaotic and disastrous for everybody involved. But high level Croak play was actually really interesting to watch because they had to be so careful about when they went in because the whole other team was ready for it. So they had to find the chink in the armor, and that's how they had to exploit it. I don't play Croak. I don't really like playing Croak, but I like watching high-level Croak because the choices, like the very minutia of when they go in and when they don't, is brilliant. When Croak is able to use his EX stealth ability, he goes invisible. The first hit, as opposed to stunning, it incapacitates, and then he goes into his regular stealth ability for free, where he can get the next stun. So against like a 3 versus 3 lineup, that person who is playing high-level Croak is like staying back, poking, trying to get some meter, and then when he gets his first bar, he's like, okay, I'm going invis, I'm gonna incapacitate Lucy, and then I'm gonna go stun Jade, and like that was how the whole match just descended into chaos. But inevitably, the healers would get back and stabilized, everybody would get healed up, and then like break, and then they'd be playing chess again around the map. So the matches took like so long at high level play because everybody knew how to sustain themselves. They knew when to get into combat, when to get out of combat. And in like the casual pub scene right now, it's sort of like people just mashing their faces into one another until someone dies.
And now kiss.
Yeah.
Moi.
But high-level Battlerite play is really fun to watch. It's about as fun to watch as the highlight reels of League of Legends and Dota. And when you watch those exciting highlight reels, you don't see the excellent ward placement.
No.
You don't see the, like, oh man, they de-warded right here. Oh man, they scouted with an ability and saw someone moving. No. You see the sick team fights. It's
Okay.
just all that.
Foxy Burrito, you need to understand this courier had one extra slot left. This guy took his item off of the courier to free up a slot so that Johnny Drango could put the item he needed on, and that's what really turned the game.
That never happens in high-level Battlerite. It's always like someone missed an ability by a pixel, and now they get blown up.
Yep. In this case, it's like, oh, well, Smoke Dog 420, right-click this guy to death. What? Look at that. Yeah,
I mean, high-level Battlerite is really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, I can imagine. So they do go in, like, into the game, we pick these 3 characters, these are our 3 characters. They don't know what the opponent is picking.
For a match, yes. I have seen some formats where they will have more than one like set in a match. If you want to think about it like tennis, almost like there's like every volley, then there's like every set, and then there's a whole match. I've seen it sometimes where they do it like that, and they do that in fighting games sometimes too. Or they do it in fighting games where, yeah, you'll lose rounds, you'll lose the game, but there's like, you play like 5 games. I've seen it rarely where they will have a chance to repick heroes if the matchup isn't going so well. But I don't know how they deal with picks and counter picks. Like, I don't know if there's like hero bans or if there's like blind picking or not. I don't know how that part works. I just know that when I see some of the tournaments that I've watched, it's been you pick your heroes blind, you go in, it's a best of 9, and you have a lot of rounds to have the balance and metagame discussion.
Okay, that's interesting. All right, any final thoughts? Pete, you never said what frustrated you or you
About
enjoyed.
balance.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we've hit most of it. I think the tier breakdown's nice. Obviously, the simplification I'm wholly on board for. Even so, this is still maybe complex enough to dissuade me, but that's a genre issue. That has nothing to do with the game. That's my personal issues.
Okay, but what you played had fun?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Right, once I delimited myself specifically, like I was like, all right, I'm just going to deal with like these 3 characters and like forget everybody else for now. And when I did that selective limitation, yeah, absolutely, it was a good game, good time.
All right, I think that's it for our discussion of Battlerite. Any final thoughts on Battlerite, Billy, Pete?
I will say that I played a little bit of Bloodline Champions. They took a lot of good things from that game and made it into a better successor. That's really cool. This game is what I wish every MOBA was, because for me personally, it takes all the things that I did not like about MOBAs and all the things that I do like, and it puts them in one game where the match lasts like 5-10 minutes instead of an hour. And so yeah, I play a lot of Battlerite, but I don't have to sacrifice my whole day. Like, if something comes up, I can leave.
Yeah.
Or I can say, oh, I'll finish this match in 4 minutes, and then I'm out the door, instead of, oh god, I just got into character to select for Dota. Well, I can't talk to you for another 50 minutes. That's huge. So I played a ton of Battlerite, I played a ton of Dota. I think Battlerite does more for its community by letting them not play when they want to.
Yeah, but it's something we haven't talked about very much, but just by turning off chat by default, by making sure that players, like, they don't need a reporting system because it can only be so bad. Like, you can lose a game, but you're not wasting 10 people's, like 9 other people's hour by screwing with them. And just by having smaller serving sizes like that, you know, an experience can only be so negative. Even in Street Fighter, like when I've been playing online, it's similar to Street Fighter. You'll get some people who just run away and taunt the whole time, and yeah, that's frustrating, but that's nowhere near as bad as someone who's throwing in Dota or something like that.
The match lasts at most 99 seconds in Street Fighter. Like,
yeah,
it's not 99 seconds as opposed to 99 minutes, and there have been some 99-minute Dota games.
Exactly. So I think that's it for our discussion of Battlerite. Remember, if you want to get in any questions leading up to our question show, or if you have any input on Battlerite, you can reach us at thatpinguino on Twitter, at DeepListensPod on Twitter also, deeplistens.libsyn.com. You can hit up our comments section, or deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. And, hey, for the new year coming, why don't you rate and review the show, or share it with a friend?
Please
Our
do.
audience continues to grow, and we like that.
Mm-hmm.
So next up, I think it's my pick, right?
Yeah, post. Well, next one's email, right? So after that, you're up again.
Yeah, so for the next game that we play, I would like to play Cuphead.
Cuphead.
Okay.
Oh, I'm down to play some Cuphead.
All right.
Are you familiar with Cuphead, Pete?
I'm not, but I'm excited just by the title.
Oh, Cuphead's so good. Imagine like old school cartoon and like animations.
Looks like
What?
1920s Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, like the old Steamboat Willie
All right.
like style animation, but it's also like a side-scrolling shooter.
All right, count me in.
Oh, that game is so weird and good.
Yep, it was a game that I've wanted to get to, and now that it's on sale, I would like to play it.
Ooh,
So-
man, I'm down for some Cuphead.
Next up, we'll be playing Cuphead.
I
So-
may bring a guest because I have a lot of friends who play.
All
We'll
right,
see.
sure. So till next time, thank you, Billy.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. I am so glad to be back on the show. I enjoyed Battlerite a ton. I would highly endorse it. It's free to play. You got no risk in trying it out. I am excited for Cuphead now too.
Thank you, Pete.
Always a pleasure, guys. Like Gina said, make sure you rate and review, send feedback, pass along to a friend, do all that good stuff.
And thank you, listeners. Till next time, peace.